Julie here with Sirius Taurus Moon, Mercury Hour, Jupiter Day. Mercury is ruling Uranus, Sedna, and the Sun that regressed to Gemini. Shout out to, wait, um, Shina Nova, YouTube, and basically she's talking about Inuit women being murdered in 10 times more rates than the national average. And there definitely has been an ongoing femicide issue. Romania created life sentences for people that even threaten, even if the woman is afraid to speak up. Italy also banned femicide. Again, countries like Netherlands are lagging behind. But this issue with Inuit society is not a new issue, as far as I understood. But it comes to the forefront with Inuit community being marginalized community, and with everything that's going up on the Arctic, marginalizing Inuit even more. So, and this is where, as an astrologer, I think when we address Sedna or Sedna in Gemini, honoring the stories of the Inuit, and because this is exactly those femicides are basically ritual sacrifice. And this is where this is an act that can create famine within the allied nations that they don't open a full-blown Article 5 on that. Like here is things. Remember, we are all the women, so let's treat the woman with respect. Um, whether we treat it as UN Security Council, I think it was 1325, or as a full-blown Article 5. By the way, a full-blown Article 5 that would actually ensure the safety and freedom of these women can create a win that's not a pirate's win. And of course it goes with resources. It goes with resources in the type of endeavors that are sovereign for all parties. That's the kind of wealth that sustains. And I think we began to see the backlashes of what doesn't sustain. And Sedna's story remind us, also when we think about international relations, wealth consolidation on maritime borders, the natural resources. Sedna was trafficked, ritually abused, and then it's an Inuit story, okay? Sedna was an Inuit girl that was trafficked by her father for power, which was some sort of occultistic power over nature. And then Sedna had the power, and there was famine. We'll have to appease Sedna. How with the right touch? Why? Because it was about not trafficking. It was about abolishing trafficking, abolishing rape. That story was within Inuit society. It reminded it even within Inuit society, the fathers that trade their daughters, or the people that traffic the women, the people that cooperate, let's say, with the colonizer. Now, it also reminds us that when we think about the creation or Epstein Island being a breeding farm, that these people were generated to become perpetrators. Just like Americans are unpleased with the endeavors in, let's say, Palestine or the endeavors in Iran, but are they talking about creating spaces for orgasmic birthing and orgasmic birthing as transitions in life and as recovery from trauma? Not necessarily orgasmic birthing of children. Is the allyship actually tending to the world transitioning in the same exact context? It's in the eighth house of NATO. It can't get more orgasmic birthing sovereignty than that. Okay? Ramses was killed by his harem. If we can't now that we have in the same Ottoman Empire, okay, the Roman Empire was reduced to a pope closing himself as a prisoner in the Vatican because of the Inquisition. Inquisition is femicide. It's basically violence against the feminine. The converted are seen as the corrupted feminine. This is also why the converted Jews were persecuted by the Inquisition. The only way to change, can Netherlands really allow itself to not ban femicide in these times? I think it's. And when we take a look at Sedna is in the 10th house for NATO, 12th house for Netherlands. It's the blind spot, allowing this femicide to go on for 3 years. That makes it susceptible for a code orange, and I don't mean the weather. And with the 10th house for NATO, it's a make or break. Like NATO could do all the things it wants to do in the Arctic, fair, sovereign, ecosystemic, by banning femicide, starting with the Inuits. That's where the big money at. The big money is not at being, a bubble of death then exposed by the true and expended by the Inquisition or the guillotine. The, when women are trafficked, people are depopulated, and around the Second World War, that dumb trick of the traffickers that looted the Nazis to loot the Jews, that thing evacuated, depopulated the Rothschilds as well. And it wasn't necessarily the Rothschilds that they wanted to depopulate. They won't say it, but they know it's true. Okay, just like only now we hear about King Ramses dying by his harem, but everybody were looking at Phoenician magic. They have to sort the wheat from the chaff in Phoenician magic. How? What supports orgasmic birthing, what does not, regardless of the gender. Naturally forced gender change does not support orgasmic birthing. Naturally, any practice of genitalia mutilation, I don't know about Islam, I saw with the Jews. They're like, yeah, orgasmic birthing, transmuting pain to power, because they saw women actually want to address these issues, to address in a very literal form. They need housing. But then the BSN. And they're busy with asylum. Now here's the thing. The immigrants are seen as the feminine. They can't ban the immigrants without banning femicide. Why? Because the excuse for burning their asylums or whatnot is like, hey, they raped the women, amazing, ban femicide. Oh, that would dredge up some things from that was wiped under the rug with Esau's children. But when I think about the alliance, Sedna is in the 10th house, and it's Uranus crossing Sedna, which means the polarization is exactly about these things. Now, folks already know when I talk about something, and it's not even a speak it into being type of thing. If I would speak something into being, it would be life that allows for orgasmic birthing, not just as life transition, but sense of self, people joyously living their lives and so on. That's the things I speak into being. Mercury is 2 meters from Antares. And the 8th house for Aries, for Anato is Aries, which is sovereignty. So the process of orgasmic birthing as processing trauma and life transitions and everything that supports that would be essentially birthing sovereignty, which is what the Alliance seeks. And what doesn't support that would negate. For example, I have the opposite ascendant, so I have 8th house Libra. Anything that supports orgasmic birthing supports my ability to, how should I say that? To access intergenerational wealth rather than intergenerational trauma, but also the balance that can also be expressed in, let's say, addressing whether it's passive income or, okay, Libra issues, the judiciary factor around the intergenerational issues like the reparations and so on and so forth. The direct for me, okay, protection of ideas and patents. The middle decan of Libra, where I have Urania, is exactly about that. Understanding, yeah, great minds think alike, but we also have to align with orgasmic birthing of life transitions to be able to be those direct for me. Now, for the 8th house Aries, which is Natu's 8th house, we're talking about sovereignty. So let's say violation of the principle of what supports orgasmic birthing was creating for me, with the Libra, lack of access to balancing, let's say, rest and work, or the intergenerational issues. With Aries, now, here's the thing, those that try to capitalize on that, it's kind of like there was a big margin that was lost, and then they would be held accountable because it's a teeter-tatter. But to get out of that teeter-tatter, we need to support orgasmic birthing as life transitions. With NATO, we will see it as sovereignty. Whether they would have enough weapons, whether the weapons would be effective, whether there would be litigations for crimes against humanity, whether there would be risk of the sovereignty of the alliance. The trauma of the military complex. Now, the ruler of the 10th house is in the 8th. The occult rituals, do they support, does the egregore support orgasmic birthing? Because now that Mercury rules Sedna, they might have oil, but it wouldn't have food. And it's just the people that thought that they would have the fresh water, the fresh air, and the fresh food that would have to appease Sedna. That's why I'm saying Inuit women murdered 10 times more. This somebody can be easily addressed. You don't have to wait for Canada to do that. In fact, it could prompt an Article 5 on Canada. If Trump does it, he will kill the Prime Minister and the ministry and everyone, loot the resources and so on. If the alliance does that, they might, and they align it with, then Europe will have the dividends of maritime borders, of the shipping transitions, of equity and ecosystemic type of energy, of good relations with the Inuit that mainly occupy exactly the Arctic. Now, for the European nations, they have to align around this issue. Of course, with Uranus and Gemini, there's a little bit of it's a civil war clock around that. But here I said, do the first term of Gemini the way we do the second. And Mercury already being in the second, let's take a look at. Okay, only people that were acquainted with the Israeli election system would understand that, but not to control. Not on news. Now here, as farther away they are from that, is as much as it's going to be. We don't need to look at the Ottomans. That's what prevents the Inquisition. Trafficking does not prevent the Inquisition. Not banning femicide does not prevent. It gives advantage to the Ottomans. You say, surely it's not the Ottoman. Come on. I've seen your faces in Turkey, okay? we don't have to pride Roman Empire's law when that law was bringing the fall of the Roman Empire by abusing women. Okay, NATO military community concluded its 195th Chiefs of Defense meeting. NATO alliance Balt holds defensive line in Balts. Okay. Okay, press conference. Let's see. Reuters. Do we actually have an article? Is this? Oh. We have the pictures. Do we have text or something? There's nice pictures. do we? What was he saying? Don't. I'm not broadcasting. Was not on air. I'm not talking about the content of the meeting. Just never mind. Defeating the Swarm project. Flytrap accelerator accelerates NATO's counter drone lethality. Germany to deploy Patriot systems to Turkey under NATO mission. Let's make it more accurate. NATO news, NATO relations with Turkey. Okay. Three weeks. And Turkey sides with BRICS, that is favors 2026. We don't actually have the most recent is whatever. Europe's uncomfortable defense partner. Again, also honoring the feminine is not about the toxic feminine. Okay, not much news there. But let's just put it that way. The question of religion is on air. To prevent inquisition, we actually have to honor the feminine. Um, in praxis, okay? King Ramses, wonderful rule, had a harem, which is trafficking, boom, killed by his harem. Taking all the Egyptian magic lore with him. We can't beat the Inquisition without honoring the feminine. Um, and for the alliance is going to be manifested because what is it? The sense of self. That's the eighth house. That's Aries. Yeah. So this episode is dedicated to Sedna and to the topic of femicide in general and the femicide of the Inuit. You know, we would think about 10 times more. Now, here's the thing: if let's say the other European countries would actually effectively ban femicide for quite some time, they would have Inuit asylum seekers. That we don't have applications for Inuit asylum seekers on an international European level, that I don't even mention American, is one thing, but that's just one of the NATO alliance. It's a telltale that it's not safe to even apply for asylum for against the femicide in country like, let's say, the Netherlands, because Netherlands has femicide for 3 years. Of course, it's affecting the chain of command. Um, and that natural Mercury is, Saturn was crossing that Mercury. Now, it's going to go there in retrograde, and and Mars, it's kind of like Mercury, Mars, Venus is there, up there in the first decan of Aries. Now Neptune crossing these is going to have a long-term implication from since the foundation of NATO. It's basically Neptune crossing this decan would be the implications of Gladio, the good things and the bad things. We saw it with a lot of military trade businesses, okay, trade deals falling flat, lack in the chain of production, issues with the shipping, which we see now with Strait of Hormuz. The currency, okay, the Turkey is a part of the BRICS almost, or already, I don't know. Okay, the fiscal statement. So it's kind of like, are they going to pay the 5% with BRICS coin? Like, now again, good thing, bad thing, who knows? Economy is weird, but this is where again, this for NATO, these are things that just swiped under the rug. Just like a Libra stellium would be able to tell me the things that I might be overwhelmed by, but I would need to address. Then, being a person with, let's say, Mercury in the second house, Aries, that I'm a bit more aware, or is my skill to tend to that more so than, let's say, if I was a Virgo ascendant. It's kind of like NATO knows, but that's a tipping point that requires, an easier transition, which is supported by things more aligned with orgasmic birthing than anything that was dishonoring of the feminine and was swept under the rug. Because Mercury is ruling over Sedna, the Inuit, the feminine within the Inuit. I know that the Inuit by colonizers are seen as the feminine, but the 10 times more is something that's unprecedented. And it's almost an omen. It's like, hey, that's the Sedna in the 10th house for NATO, with Mercury going into the 8th. Supporting of orgasmic birthing conditions and housing for Inuit women. Not just Inuit, but that's going to tell what the Inuit women are dealing with is going to be a telltale that we can induct from on other issues of femicide. Or where is it also in our culture? Tending to that within the Inuit community is going to bring, for example, what do they need? They need an asylum is actually safer, but can Nederland offer that now? Just for the women, not the men to break the women up. No, there's femicide in there. Banned femicide. ban the dishonoring of the feminine? Yeah. That's kind of important to prevent the Code Orange. Oh wait, in the 1800 chart, Uranus is up there in the 12th house, in the what they didn't, what is the blind spot. Netherlanders traveling the world, and they're like wondering should they return to Netherlands. I'm like, are you sure it's safe for women? People used to ask for asylum in Netherlands because of women's rights. Tending to any Sedna story within Netherlands or within any country. Yeah, I mean, people were talking about Brussels, and then we end up with asylums being burned, with basically both the men, the women, and the children. It's kind of like we could come up with a better policy to address immigration that needs to be addressed. For example, defunding the technologies or defunding the functions in the technologies that use those to target and dishonor the feminine. And again, to the extent that it has been done, we also see yielding results. Okay, I'm not sitting there with the, with the accountants report of NATO. Okay, but I'm sure we're going to see the positive results and the sovereign results. The more that those things are addressed. And that's going to be sovereignty. That's going to be winning at wars, wins that are not a Pyrrhus win. It's going to be access to the weapon that is actually effective in preventing sovereignty violations and protecting sense of self. And it's going to be also for when we talk about passive income or being invested in. So, and again, to the instances that we see it as something positive is moving there, then we also see the results. And to the extent that it still operates like fraternities and sororities, we also see deals dropped, shipping delays, and so on, which means losses at the actual frontiers, losses and delays, but also losses and delays of the natural resources and the dividends and the actual transition into more ecosystemic energy. Ecosystemic energy cannot be with slavery and trafficking. Sedna, okay, when Sedna was trafficked, basically, when she was lost, they had to appease Sedna, and she was sacrificed by a ritual that was supposed to control over nature. So with Sedna, there was the missing food. It also puts an end to the belief that the sacrificing a woman or sacrificing a girl or sacrificing the feminine is going to bring basically wealth or food. And here's the thing. The absorption of the minerals. Okay, the Sedna also has to do with minerals. And so it is not transmuting to power, but actually to the illusion of power that is actually not power. And that is, and here's the thing, the Epstein occult that was creating pen to so-called transmute it to power basically was creating big giant addiction corporation complex conglomerate